The number one thing you need to know is that people don't invest in ideas. They don't invest in proof of concept. They invest in people. That's the bottom line.
Prize that came with it was million US dollars. Share with me that moment when they called out your name.
There are moments when you think it's not going to work, that the business should close. We actually have 3 times run out of runway, like could not pay the bills, did not know how I was going to pay my staff. I think the pendulum has got to swing in the direction of women and women-founded, women-focused businesses. And so we're talking about a D2C app, which is a direct-to-consumer app. I said to him, do you have children? And he said no. And so I immediately kind of put a line through his name. And he said, but my wife is pregnant and she's due in February. And this is personal. We went all in. Yeah, so we bonded the house. We literally took our only asset.
Yeah.
We went all in. We went all in.
All right, everybody, I am so excited for today's episode because I'm speaking to someone that has done something extraordinarily important in today's society, but for humanity in general as well. I have so much respect for entrepreneurs who build businesses that are, in the essence of helping humanity move forward. And today's guest has done that in a beautiful way with the app and the product and the technology that she's built for mothers and their little ones. I'm so happy to introduce on the show occupational therapist and the woman behind the parenting app called the Parents Sense app. Please help me welcome onto the stage co-author of 8 book titles as well as an award-winning entrepreneur, Meg Forree. Hello, Meg.
Thank you. Hi, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I mean, when I saw, on LinkedIn particularly, which is one of my favorite apps, when I got to see the work that you had been doing and your name kept popping up quite often within, the entrepreneurial zeitgeist of at least the South African, tech ecosystem, I was like, I need to speak to Meg. I want to find out where this magic all comes from and what she is building, because I think the world needs to hear all about it. So today's conversation is definitely one for the books, and I can't wait to hear more about your story. What I recently saw, and I'm going to start at this particular point instead of starting, backwards. But when you recently won a pitch competition called the Big Pitch 2025, which was a staggering, prize that came with it, which was just about $1 million US dollars. Share with me that moment when they called out your name that you had won, because that's going to be the genesis of this conversation, because everything before that is what we're going to be discussing. But tell us what that moment felt like.
It was completely unbelievable. I think any entrepreneur will tell you that it is a long, hard slog. And there are moments when you think it's not going to work, that the business should close. We actually have 3 times run out of runway, like could not pay the bills, did not know how I was going to pay my staff. And so I've really lived the entrepreneurial journey, and it's hard. So when you're standing on a stage like that, and the contenders who were up for this particular award were, incredible businesses in Africa solving real world problems. I didn't for a second think that, first of all, we'd get through the first round and then we get into the top 3 and then that we'd actually win. So I guess it was disbelief. And actually, when I look back at the videos of myself, I actually looked like a bit of an idiot standing on the stage because I was so shocked. I had very little emotion on my face. I was like, how? Me? How? And so, yeah, we were completely blown away. And then obviously afterwards came the elation of actually, what does this mean for our business, which has been incredible.
Definitely, I think such moments remind you of the reason why you do it all, right? What did they say if you had in any conversation with either the judges or the stakeholders who are part or involved within the process? What are some of the sentiments that they shared were some of the reasons why you guys took the prize? Did you ask them any of that, or are you still shocked and wonder that you were like, I'm still, taking it all in?
Yeah, so I guess definitely the fact that we were female founded, female led, and female impact. And I think the pendulum has got to swing in the direction of women and women founded, women focused businesses. And I think there was an awareness of that. I don't think that the gender card was the only thing, but I do think that it was important actually for Africa, really, that a woman was at least in the top 3. And of course we were. So that was definitely one of the pieces that I think did play a role. one of the things they told me is that the business that one had to be highly scalable. And I think that was one of the things when I look at the other businesses, which were incredible contenders, a lot of them were dependent on quite high infrastructure costs. And the minute you've got a high infrastructure cost, your scalability is potentially impacted by fundraisers and capex and so on. So we're that type of business in the tech world where we've built what we've built. We have to continue building, but we're now in a position where we can really just land customers, scale, 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 and take it to, to the world. So that was another big thing. And then the third really big piece, and this was particularly important for the Oppenheimer Foundation, which was behind the prize. The very important thing for them was that it was impact focused and that we would be changing something in the world. And we all know that the start of life, those first kind of formative 1,000 days, 3 years of life in pregnancy, are incredibly important in the child's long-term development. And so I think they saw that, and they saw, kind of definitely that we were going to be impactful. And if I had to just add in one more thing, we had proof of concept to roll this out in a B2B business style. And so we're talking about a D2C app, which is a direct to consumer app. In other words, consumers are end users. But if consumers were paying, it would definitely not have won. We had to have a B2B play because effectively what we do is we put the app into the hands of moms for free with big business paying. And we've done that again and again and again in South Africa. And they knew that we could replicate that globally. So scalability, impact, proof of concept, and the fact that we were a woman-founded, woman-focused business was important.
That gives us context now as well to start this conversation off from understanding broadly, right, what in that room was a focus, but also what in this economy and in this time, what matters to not only investors but to consumers as well, right? Because winning means that being able to even have proof of concept meant that there was interest, desire, and love from a consumer standpoint as well. But we're gonna, I'm just so excited to unpack all of that today. But if you were to explain to someone watching what exactly the product is, right? I could take a guess and say it's taking the guesswork out of parenting, but I'm sure you would give it a little bit more juice within that definition. But also just share with us what is the app, what is the product, what is the company, and your role in it as well.
Yeah, so in order to explain the product, I'd love to start with the problem. And the problem is that any woman and man who've had children know just how lost you feel in those first few years of your child's life. I mean, you don't have all the answers. You know that this is the most important role that you've ever occupied in your life, raising a human life, and yet you haven't got the skill set to do it. And so it's into that context that we come into parenting, and parents then start to look online, they start to talk to ChatGPT, they Google, they go to YouTube, they're all over the place, but they don't have curated information that's specific to their child. If they want information specific to their child, they've got to go and find a medical professional. So what we've done is we've made content very specific to you and your child. So if you are 38 weeks pregnant, the app only delivers information for 38 weeks of pregnancy. If your baby is 6 weeks old and was born 6 weeks early, we will deliver premature baby content for a baby who is round about at birth age because they were 6 weeks prem. So you've got a very, very customized, specific product and information that's been given to moms. And it's also data driven. So as the mom or the dad actually tracks any information about their baby, it then delivers information that's even more nuanced. So about prematurity, sleep, feeding, and so on. So it really is a data driven digital product that helps parents as they raise their little ones.
Yeah. Again, I like the fact that you started with the problem because that gives us context to understanding why is this particular product important or valuable in this time. And I, definitely I've heard so many mothers, again, and this is a problem that is not just once off. It's a problem across the board. It's global. It's not culture specific. It's not sector specific. It's across the board. So I think I genuinely understand why it's a need and a necessity more than it is just a product or an app that you just want, right? But why? Like, why, Meg, did you want to do something like this? I mean, why was this the product that you wanted to create? Why was this a problem that you wanted to solve? Because there are so many problems that you could have chosen to venture into, but this one was something that you felt like you wanted to do. You've done successfully so now, but why?
Yeah, so the journey goes back 25 years. I trained as an occupational therapist. I actually lived in New York, interestingly. I worked in a hospital in New York City and
Which part?
absolutely. So I actually lived just north of New York City, in about 20 minutes north, in a place near White Plains, which is up the Hudson
Okay,
Line. For those
nice.
people who, yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I was working with babies right from the get-go. I've always worked with small children, and it's always been my passion to make their lives better and to change their trajectory. One of the things we know about early childhood is if you impact early on, the trajectory can change in very meaningful directions long term. Small changes at the beginning go in very different directions. So you really do want to impact children early. So that was my first why, is because I know that early childhood is the most pivotal time in a human's life. The second reason I wanted to solve this problem was because I was a new mom myself. And, after I came back from New York, I lived in Cape Town. And having had three of my own children, like, I really know how lost I felt. And I think I have a very deep empathy for moms. I've never forgotten that feeling of how I had always been so on top of things, and suddenly I really wasn't. I was really lost. So I wanted to solve it for moms. And so early on in my career, I ran a private practice as an occupational therapist, and actually ran that all the way up until 2019. But I wrote a book kind of really just a few years into my working life, and that book became an overnight bestseller. It was, and to this day, it's a bestseller in the parenting space. It's called Baby Sense. And on the back of that book, I then developed my first business, which was called Baby Sense, and sold that in 2014. So that was kind of a 9-year journey from starting the business all the way through to selling it. And that business is still going today. And then after that, I realized, actually, I've had X amount of impact with my 8 books. I've had so much impact with my product company called Baby Sense. But the only way that I can scale this and take it broader is if I do it digitally and through a scalable digital product. And that's the reason why we ended up with an app.
Mm. And I guess the entrepreneurial bug had bit you in that sense, because, one could consider that being an occupational therapist, working in a hospital, and, that type of traditional way of making impact still very valuable. But one could kind of assume it as not being really entrepreneurial to some capacity, unless in your case as well, you starting your own practice gives you a little bit of the entrepreneurial step in. But creating a business is something completely different as well. So what was that kind of transition for you like, when you were an occupational therapist to starting your own practice, then taking the next leap, which is building and selling a company? 3 different stages, all completely different. But
Yeah.
what did they look like for you and feel like for you?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because you're right. That DNA of an entrepreneur is something very unique. An entrepreneur is somebody who, we see problems everywhere, and we deeply resonate with those problems. Like, we can really see how to solve it as well. And once that bug is bitten, it's very hard to escape it. And so I had identified a problem. I wanted to solve it. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And of course, your product itself will always adjust. And that's one of the things we say with entrepreneurs is, you must actually build on the go. Like, literally jump out the plane and build the parachute on the way down. That's what entrepreneurs do. Of course, it's terrifying, but that's actually the right way to do it, because then you can adjust your product beautifully in response to the environment and the problems. So that whole kind of journey of problem, solution, build, bring a team together, that once you've been bitten by that entrepreneurial bug, you really battle not to go back, in my opinion. I mean, I couldn't do anything different after my first business. The bug had bitten, and I wanted to build another business. And yeah, it's an exhilarating journey. It takes incredible tenacity, which we can talk about a little bit later, but it's actually a little bit like an addiction and a drug. So yes, I am bitten.
A good addiction, they say. One that helps provide job opportunities and changes the world. So why not be bitten by it? Let's talk about that first business that you had, so that it can kind of give us leeway into what you've built now, because understanding what you're done with that business help us shape your entrepreneurial kind of understanding, and your achievements, etc. Help us to grasp at core what this product is that you're building now. So how did that business, but what was the structure of that business? What is the product around it? And the selling aspect of it, what did that look like as well?
Mm. So that's such a good question. The problem I was solving there was helping parents to get more sleep at night. That was like the key thing. I was like, parents are so sleep deprived, we've got to get them more sleep. And so we built a product range around sleep. It was sleeping bags, swaddling blankets, weighted blankets, or doo-doo blankies, all sorts of sleep products for parents. They were made out of soft fabrics generally. And so we would procure the materials generally in the East, so China or Thailand. We would then manufacture here in South Africa with a CMT, and then we would sell through the likes of Woolworths, Baby City, Dis-Chem, and so on. And that was kind of the business model. And it was an incredibly successful business very quickly. So within 3 years, we'd listed our product in every major retailer in South Africa. We were the premium baby product. We went international. We took it to America. We took it to the UK. And it was an amazing business. But my gosh, it was difficult. And it was one of the reasons why with this business, it's digital, because with that business, it was stock. And the problem with stock is that we would have 9 months of capital tied up in those products, from placing the order of fabric in Thailand or China to actually getting our money out of the retailers, who were often on 90-day terms, was 9 months worth of capital tied up. And so we had a success problem, and it's a problem that many entrepreneurs who run stock businesses run into, is that the more successful your business is, the more orders you get, and the more orders you get, the more capital you need, and suddenly you're running out of capital, you can't fulfill your orders, and it just becomes a cycle. So that was very scary, and I never wanted to go back into stock business afterwards. As we approached the 10-year mark, it was probably about 8 years in, I realized I couldn't keep going like this, and I needed somebody with deeper pockets. If I knew then what I know now, I would have raised money differently. But what I ended up doing was I ended up selling 49% of the company to a distributor in South Africa, a distributor of baby products. And they were then procuring the materials. They were running that kind of cash flow situation, and I was just managing the branding and the product development. So in a way, it should have been a match made in heaven. What actually ended up was that the relationship turned toxic, sadly, and it got to a point where I realized either I needed to buy them out or they could buy me out. And in the end, they made me a better offer than I could make them. And so I sold the business. When you sell your first business, and this is, entrepreneurs who've sold a business will know this, you suffer terribly from founder syndrome, which is where your whole identity is tied up in this. I was Baby Sense. And so it was a massive journey for me to actually sell and to exit and then to regroup afterwards. So lots of lessons through that. 1, that I didn't want to be in stock. 2, that you've got to pick your partners carefully. 3, that capital raising is an art, and you need to really be well matched with the capital that you raise or the partnerships you get into. And 4, this time round, I'm building to sell, which is a very different attitude than the first time round, where I was building a lifestyle business, and that's why I didn't want to let go of it. Lots and lots of lessons from business number 1.
And how long was the transition after that particular first business, or rather after selling your stake in the first business to starting the second business? What was that time period in between?
Yeah, so that business was sold in April 2014, and within a year, I knew what I wanted to build. And so it was quite a short period of time. And often I think back and I think, gosh, I should have gone and done an MBA or done something different for a little bit, but I didn't. Again, entrepreneurial bug had bitten. I jumped straight back in. So within a year, I had licensed or registered the patent for the product we've got now. And that was in 2015. And then between 2015 and 2020, when this product launched, so 5 years, I really battled to find exactly how we would put it together. We had registered a patent, which then very shortly afterwards was registered by another company in America and then sold to Mattel. So Mattel had seen what we were going to do, and they had bought that patent, and then actually they ended up never doing anything with it. So I let my patent lapse because I thought I'm never going to take Mattel on, and maybe my idea is just too big for me coming from Cape Town, South Africa. Let me not go there. And so I almost put it on ice for a couple of years. I had an early childhood program at the time called Play Sense, which still runs. It's got 20 schools in South Africa. So I got involved in that a little bit. But I really wanted to build this product. And so fast track to 2019, I decided, you know what, it's time now. And we started to look ahead to actually building this product and launched it in 2020.
2015, being a time, almost 10 years ago now, I could also imagine it was not a time where the tech boom had arrived or the AI boom had arrived. So what were you thinking about in that time? Like, how did you kind of get that inkling that we were moving quite vigorously within the direction of digitization of everything, quite particularly? So where did you get that from? So how did you kind of imagine that and see that future so vividly in that time to then it being kind of something that in 2020 was, on the skyrocket in that sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was way ahead of the times, and that was part of the problem. And I mean, I'll tell you two stories about that. The one is that in my first business that I sold, called Baby Sense, I actually built an app. And it was the very first parenting app on the iTunes store at the time. And it was so early that it wasn't even on, there was no such thing as the Google Play Store. I mean, you can't imagine this, but this was in 2009 or 2008. So it was a long time ago. So I'd built this app. We'd taken it to the market. So I was way ahead of the curve at that time. In fact, I'll tell you another story, which I still can't believe I tell people, but we had a Facebook group, or in those days they were called, and we didn't have Facebook pages, but Facebook group that was a parenting group called Baby Sense that was the largest parenting Facebook page in the world in that year.
Wow.
And we won an award in America for that. And then very quickly everybody caught on, and suddenly the parent center was like 10 times bigger than us. I mean, it was a super short period of time, but it illustrates for you that I've been a little bit ahead of the curve and then not being able to keep up with it or had the money to actually fuel it a couple of times in my life. So we built the first app. That got acquired with the first business. So in 2014, when I sold the business, I said to the guy who was buying it from me, I said, the only thing I want you to leave with me is the app. And he couldn't see the value of it. And he said, you're not having the app. He took the app and he collapsed it within a year. Now, if he kept that going, that would have been his gold, but he didn't. And so when I came back round, I was then ready to build it in 2015. But the piece that I wanted to do in 2015, which was ahead of the curve, was not the app, because that had obviously been done by then. But the piece that was ahead of the curve was taking digital data, well, biometric data off babies, and using that biometric data to inform behavioral change. So in other words, if your baby's asleep, what time should it go back to sleep? And using wearable devices in order to get that. Now, there was a company in Cape Town at the time, in Techno Park in Stellenbosch, and called LifeQ. And they actually had a little wearable chip. And I went to them and I said to them, guys, you've got the wearable chip, you've got the little chip for biometric reading. Let me take the data off a baby and put it into my app and see what I can do with it. And into the idea of putting it into the app. I didn't have an app at the time. This is obviously 2015. And the other app was sold. And so we went and we put it into a lab and we started to look at babies, look at their heart rates. And we just didn't know what to do because the algorithms for babies' sleep based on their heart rate and their biometrics were so different to adults that we couldn't make sense of it. And so we were actually quite a bit ahead of the curve at the time. Now, the world is caught up now, and now we're ready. So we've now got the software, and the next piece we're going to be doing is we're going to be integrating it with cameras and baby nursery devices.
I can't wait to really hear all about where that future development is going towards this, because I know with the incorporation of AI as well, there's so much that we're going to be seeing unfold. But I'm also quite curious, Meg, you mentioned that you were ahead of the curve, right? But also gave us context that you had spent some time abroad. And I always try and find out from founders, this question of their background, not necessarily their background or the story of their origin, but fundamentally, like, some of the things that we go through or some of the things that we experience do have a part to play in how we see and how our mind shapes opportunities. Would you say that that did have a role to play in you kind of being ahead of the curve within the African context? Or is that just something that you have innately within you to see ahead in the future? Or did being part of, in New York or in an international global city like New York have a role to play in you then, seeing things and wanting to implement them in this capacity?
Such an interesting question. I'd say that there are three things that impact Africans. The first, which impacts everybody globally, is our DNA, who we were, what our grandmother did, the home we were brought up in, the way that we see the world, the lenses we see the world through. So our parents give that to us, our upbringing gives that to us, and our genes give that to us. So that's piece number one. Piece number two comes from being African. And I have a very deep sense that, and I know it, is that we are seriously innovative. We live in a continent where if you're not making a plan, you're going to be in trouble, and we are very agile. The Afrikaans phrase "boer maak 'n plan"
Like a plan.
is exactly, it is all about us. We make a plan, we see a problem, we make a plan, and we don't take no for an answer very easily. So, and that's in our DNA, and I've lived overseas now a couple of times in my life, and I can tell you the Americans have it. There's absolutely no question. They have this, there are no ceilings. If you can imagine it, you can build it. The Americans have that. There are lots of other countries in the world, and I've lived in a few others where that doesn't exist. And so being an African is an important thing. So I've got my DNA, I've got my African roots, and then you do something different, and that's you step outside of your genre and of your paradigm, and you move into a space where you are drowning because you are a foreigner. And I think there is actually research that I've read recently on the fact that people who do emigrate and are immigrants in a place tend to do better because they don't have a backstop. When they get there isn't somebody who's waiting to catch them. Every day is hard. And in 2020, we moved to, just before COVID, so we didn't know COVID was coming, obviously. We moved to a small island off the coast of France called Jersey. And Jersey, it was an amazing place to move to. We were very happy there, but we were always foreign. Everything was always a little bit more difficult. And I mean, I know you've lived in New York and you've probably experienced the same thing, is that, getting that kind of getting out of your comfort zone is a very important thing if you're going to be an entrepreneur, because you're going to live outside your comfort zone, actually. And so I would say that also makes a difference. And of course, as you alluded to just now, it makes you see the world differently because you can see opportunity differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And being a global citizen, which is what you are, and being a global citizen who's now building a global business, which is something that I think is so fundamentally important. Now, let's dissect your current business, right? Now we understand the framework of why you're doing what you're doing. We understand, a little bit about your business background and that particular story. But let's look at the app currently right now. Where are you within the stage of entrepreneurship, would you say? Would you say you are not a lot more now comfortable at ease within the building phase? Would you say that you are now at the growth phase? Where are you sitting in your journey from the company and the product's point of view?
So we are in the scale-up stage of business, which means that we have proved our product market fit. We know what our next steps are, and we now just need to press go and make it happen. So I'll take you through a couple of phases that happened before that. So obviously your first phase is ideation, where you've got an idea, and unfortunately everybody's got an idea. It's making it happen that's the hard part. So we moved through the ideation. What I did particularly well, and my team did particularly well, is we built an MVP. It's supposed to be called a minimal viable product. We call ours a maximal viable product. It was a pretty good product in the short period of time. And we got that to the market very quickly. So we only started building on the 1st of December 2019. And we took the product to market almost complete. Well, it was complete, but obviously we've refined it since then. On the 27th of April, in the middle of lockdown, we had our launch. So it was super short period of time. 5 months to build a product that's this robust was a very short period of time. So But that would be the stage that I would call us a startup. We were raising money again and again and again, and we were in a cycle of loss making and raising money because we were putting so much money into the dev and into the marketing at the time. And that took us all the way through to about 2023. And in that whole time, we were very much focused on D2C sales. So in other words, getting the end user, the mom, to pay for the product. And what we thought we had product market fit because everybody loved our product, but that's not what product market fit is. Product market fit is when somebody will actually pay for your product. And the reality was that people don't like to pay for apps. And so in 2023, we then had to pivot. So that was the next stage of the business, was the big pivot, where we stopped trying to get customers who were paying for the app directly, and we focused just on big business. And that was, since 2023, we've landed customers like Vodacom Africa, Discovery Health, Momentum Health, MediHelp, Pick and Pay Medical, Sasolmed, Clicks. So we've got all of these amazing corporate customers, and they now pay for the product and they give it to the end user because they know that the end user wants it and they want to get some sort of value out of that transaction with the end user. So that's been the pivot, the proof of it. And now that we've actually starting to see the success, we can actually start to replicate it.
What is a conversation with those multinationals that kind of you are having from the product standpoint? Is it more of them wanting to be closer to that demographic of a consumer as well? What particularly are they looking for as the incentive for partnering with a platform like yours?
Such a brilliant question, because of course that is the number one question you need to ask if you're an entrepreneur and you want somebody to pay for something. You've got to try and get in their heads and understand what their agenda is. So the medical aids have got 3 agendas and we tick these boxes for them. And this covers anything in health: medical insurers, governments, NGOs. All 3 of them have got 3 agendas. So the first agenda is just delivering value to their customers because they want their customers to love them. So, and particularly in the medical insurance space, it's highly competitive. So they know that parents make decisions about their medical aid more as they fall pregnant than at any other stage in their life, because you're weighing up, what does the maternity benefit look like here? Because this is the most important step I'm taking in my health journey. So first thing is value to the consumer. And so we make sure that we don't just deliver a beautiful app, we deliver communication, we make the moms feel good, can come to free webinars, we support. So first key thing is that we deliver value and we make the customer love whoever the payer is. Discovery Health is an example. Second big thing that these medical aids want, and all of the medical businesses want, is they want to de-risk themselves. They want preventative health. So they want to make sure that in this very risky stage of life, through cesarean sections, through breastfeeding rates, through vaccination schedules, through postnatal depression, that they de-risk for all of these things. And so they keep their customers safe, because if they keep their customers safe, they've got a healthy population, they're spending less money. And that goes whether they're a government or whether they're medical insurers. And then the third thing they want is data. And we don't give personalized data because our mom's data is their data. We don't touch it. We are GDPR compliant. We are POPIA compliant. We do not give their data away, but we can anonymize and aggregate the data and feedback information into the medical insurers or into the government to say, listen, this is what happens when. So this is how long somebody breastfed for. This is how sick their baby's been. So, whatever it is, this is the vaccination rate in your population. And so that's the type of data that we can give back. And that's a big piece of our business that we're building out now.
Yeah. And I can also imagine how that particular information and that partnership to some degree helps those stakeholders as well make informed decisions for these mothers or these parents who are also, part of their ecosystem too. So it's quite fundamentally important to partner with the platform like yours. So once the partners have come into play, who are the other stakeholders that you could say, right? You've mentioned from the corporate and from the corporate and from the institutional kind of partners who are the B2B kind of play, the mothers as well. Who else is part of the stakeholder within kind of completing this ecosystem that you are a big player in, that you'd say that you have noted as being essential to kind of completing it holistically?
Yeah. So The stakeholders do include, as you said, the end users, which is the mum and the baby herself. I mean, ultimately the baby, but through her, the mum or the dad. The medical insurance and health space is one of our pillars. So we actually talk about 4 different pillars. One of them is the health space, which is the one that we are most closely aligned with. The second pillar that we look at are the MNOs, so what the mobile network operators, Vodacom and MTN as an example. Now, the reason that they are good partners is that they have access to a much broader population. So if you think about your medical aids in South Africa, they really do serve your higher LSMs, maybe 7 to 10, or maybe even 8 to 10. But we don't want this to be a product for the privileged. In fact, the opposite. We believe that every mom should be able to have access to this information, and hopefully for free. And so the next layer that we look at is definitely our MNOs, our mobile network operators, because moms can actually use their airtime to pay for our product. So if you've got airtime that's going to be wasted at the end of the month, you can subscribe to our product, and then you at least get some value for your rands at the end of the month. So the mobile network operators are a good partner, and they are one of our partners. The third partner are baby brands and retailers. And an example of that would be Clicks Baby Club. So they just want to give value to their moms so that moms are more loyal to them and come back to them. And so we work with Clicks Baby Club as an example. And then the fourth pillar, which is a very important pillar, and we have not cracked this nut, is the employee wellness space. So we know that businesses lose employees when they fall pregnant. The rate of attrition in high-powered women leaving the job world because they don't have care for their babies, they don't have support in their work in their life as a mom as well, is massive. And so we are trying to get our product into the hands of moms through their businesses so that to support them with their health. Unfortunately, we don't yet have a really big customer there, but it's definitely something that we're looking at and, that we're exploring. So I think that
Yeah.
would be, if you ask me for the stakeholder ecosystem, that probably covers it all.
And I asked that question particularly because you mentioned that you are in the scale level of your business now. So when thinking about scale, you kind of think a lot more broader than just having the end consumer as the only stakeholder within your who you are existing with. But now when scale comes into play, you need to kind of think broader, right? And think about who are the other players that we can incorporate. So I hope that answer is going to help, an entrepreneur as well who is en route to being to scale, to start opening up their minds as well into thinking, how could we partner strategically, effectively to grow and scale this business? Now, you mentioned that it took you a couple of months to build your MVP, which a lot of people could say that's not their experience. Share with us what it took to build that team that was able to do that, because fundamentally you cannot do that on your own, right? You need people who you have the bandwidth and the creativity and the capacity to do that. So what did that founding and kind of building team look like? How are you able to spot them and find them and bring them on board to be able to bring that MVP to in that amount of time?
Yeah, so I did a very clever thing. I'm going to tell you the secret here. So when I was building this product, I took it out to probably about 12, I think it was 12 different dev houses, as they call them, so development houses that had front end, back end, DevOps, all the different, kind of technical skills that I needed. And I got them to quote, and eventually I whittled it down to 3. And what made and I looked at their quotes, I looked at their time, I looked at everything. What made me decide it was that the final question that I asked each of them was, do you have a baby?
Ooh.
Now, of course, in these situations, I'm dealing with largely men who are going to build this, because at the time, and interestingly, my dev team is now predominantly women, but that's a whole nother story. But I was dealing predominantly with men. And the last guy I spoke to, who's the one that got the job, I said to him, do you have children? And he said no. And so I immediately kind of put a line through his name. And he said, but my wife is pregnant and she's due in February, and this is personal. And that was exactly what happened. Marius got on board, and when my current CTO at the time was the developer who worked for him at the time, Judith. And when you ask her about those months of coding, they didn't sleep. They did not sleep from the beginning of December until April. They were working 18-hour days, not because they were trying to deliver me an app, because Marius wanted an app for his wife, for their baby.
Oh, that's a
And
beautiful
that was
story.
it, So So I made it personal and I looked for somebody who was going to be as motivated as I was to get something out quickly. And it was the best decision. I mean, they built an incredible product in a record time.
Yeah, that is such a powerful way of kind of framing how you are picking a team, like looking for those small, softer human touches as well, beyond just the technical skills that you could kind of incorporate within your business. And I'm curious now as well, right? A lot of the times we speak to early stage founders who might have never had a business before, but you're in a different category because you had had a business and you had sold a business, so you had business experience prior to starting this particular company. So, what did the initial funding, look like in order to start and to get that dev team, to get the product and the MVP started? What did that look like? Did you raise initially in the beginning, or did you have some capital that was able to kind of get you started off? What did that kind of transition look like for you?
Yeah, so we bonded the house. We literally took
You went all
took our
in.
only asset. And
Yeah.
we went all in. We went all in. We took our only asset, which was our home, and we bonded the house and we paid for the build of the first app and the first year of running costs for the business. So we put that money into the business. By the end of 2020, we're now like deep in lockdown in the UK. I was living in obviously in Jersey at the time. We're deep in lockdown and I've run out of money. So I go to my first investor. It was actually the first conversation I had as well. And I said to him, I'm going to need to raise some money. And he said, okay, that's fine. We'll give you a valuation of X, which of course is a valuation not based on revenue because revenue's nowhere. Gave me a valuation, gave me the money. And that saw me through for 12 months. So that first tranche of money and investment saw me through for 12 months, which got me to the end of 2021. And at that time, we had 3 new investors come on, and all the way through from there, all the way until now, with SAFT, which with the big prize, the big pitch, we've actually raised money only from high net worths and family offices, and we got very close to having an investment a month ago from a venture capital firm. They offered us a term sheet, and I was keen. They were keen to go ahead with it, and I walked away at the very bitter end. And the reason I walked away is that our business is quite different, and impact is such a deep piece of it that I need people who believe in the vision as much as they do believe in the fact that I'm going to make them a lot of money. So I know I am going to be successful, but I want people to be on not because of that. I want people to be on because they know what we're doing and the lives we're changing, because it changes the mentality behind what they're expecting from us and how quickly. And so, we've raised successfully only from family offices, only from high net worths. And now with this SAFT investment that's coming in from the big pitch, that'll be our first institutional raise.
Wow. And I think that's such a again, I asked this question as well because, as I said, you are in a different kind of bracket because with your knowledge and your experience of having built and kind of sustained a business, that gives investors a little bit more confidence, would you say, to ensuring that they can trust you with funding, knowing that you were able to kind of see through a company and kind of scale a company to that regard. Would you say that had a role to play? And what advice would you also give to those who are in either the bracket that you were in, which is having started something and having scaled it, and those who haven't, those who are kind of on the kind of ground up, still considering and thinking about that initial kind of angel investor, on the ground investment need and desire for their business right now?
Yeah, so I mean, the number one thing you need to know is that people don't invest in ideas. They don't invest in proof of concept. They invest in people. That's the bottom line. An investor invests because they believe that you can do it, and that you're the right CEO, the right person to solve this problem. So that's very important. So and one day I intend to be an angel investor. I hope that I make enough money out of this business to put back into other people's businesses. I'm very passionate about it. But a couple of things that I would look for and what people need to really think about before they get into a business. The first is, do you have what it takes to stay in the game? Because the tenacity that you need in order to keep getting up every morning, even when it's very hard, when the product's not working, when people are saying no to you, when you're just showing losses every month, when your runway is running out, when you can't pay your staff. I mean, the tenacity to stay with it and staying power is huge. So big decision if you're getting into entrepreneurship. That's the first thing you need to know is, do you have the staying power? Part of staying power is, what does your support system look like? I mean, my husband has been 100% behind this business. He bonded the house. I wasn't the one who made that call. He made that call. He put the money in. And every time I have turned around and said, I'm closing the business, which has happened a couple of times where I just can't carry on, he's been the one to say, you've got another one in you. Keep going. You're okay. You've got this. And I think if at any point somebody doubts you from behind you, it makes it that much harder. Entrepreneurship is hard enough already. So, make sure you can stick with it and make sure you've got a good support system, because the investors are going to look for that. That's ultimately what they're going to want to know.
Yeah. And it's great to have had, that type of support structure, which I think is essential. Sometimes if you don't have it around you, you kind of have to stem it somewhere from inside of you so that you can keep going at it, because it's quite difficult. Now, when it comes to the current app itself, how far and wide has the platform gone? What has been the response, at least from an end consumer point of view, the reception? Because what kind of conversations are you even having with the investors in terms of and other stakeholders in terms of showing them the value of this product? Like how are the moms reacting and the little ones saying and reacting to the product?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had probably about more than 500,000 downloads just of the native app. And then of the web app, which is the Vodacom app, we've probably got about 600,000 people who've touched the app at any point. So definitely over 1 million people have touched the products. I had a goal at the beginning of 2022, and I had this like big picture that I showed everyone in my team, like, we're going to hit 100,000 monthly active users. And it's always been the holy grail for me to hit 100,000 monthly active users. Now, to give you an idea, middle of last year, I would say we probably had about 5,000 monthly active users. So we were very far off this goal. And suddenly, as the wheels have started to turn, and increasingly more rapidly, we're now starting to see those numbers. And just this morning, we hit our record number for November. I got the numbers this morning. I was super excited. And we're over 70,000 monthly active users now. And when I talk about a monthly active user, that's not just somebody who's like popping in and out. That's somebody who's actually going in repeatedly, using it for long periods of time, doing courses. Like, we've got a big definition for monthly active users. So we're going to hit 100,000 probably by the end of the year. And if you take all our users in the product each month now, we are over 100,000. So our impact is scaling. We've got an incredible opportunity potentially in America and another one in the UAE, both of which are very big parenting markets. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, I want to touch my goal by the end of next year, by the end of 2026, is to touch 2.5 million babies. And the way that I see doing that is to have 1 million parents using some form of the product, and each of them will have 2.5 babies on average. So that's kind of what we're looking to do by the end of next year and the scale that we're looking at.
That's incredible. That's absolutely amazing to hear. And, looking at the different markets, and we're going to touch base into the global expansion in a second, but particularly looking focused into the South African market and having, touched that many downloads in and of itself in a market that one could kind of say that doesn't necessarily have that much infrastructure from a technological standpoint, more than the other markets that you're entering into. So scalability there would look 10 times more than what it looks here. But when looking into the South African market, what does the marketing kind of bandwidth look like for something like this? I can also imagine that having moms tell their friends, right, at a baby shower, that try this app out, and that's one of the ways in which a beautiful product like this can be expanded and shared across different parts of the country. But what are some of your marketing efforts? Because to get those amount of downloads takes quite a lot, from such a market like South Africa. So what have been some of your efforts that you have made into ensuring that you're reaching the mothers?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I mean, obviously you've got paid media spend. And, when we started in 2020, paid media was so cheap, like, because not everyone was digital. We all thought we were digital. We weren't really. Now, everybody's fighting for airtime. So paid media spend is very, very expensive. We do have paid media spend going out. We do a lot of organic nurturing of mums, so things like our webinars, our social media, that type of thing. So we do a fair amount of that. We've just started a Reddit campaign. So we, kind of touching moms through Reddit at the moment as well. That's also more organic, and very much focused on GEO, which is the chatbots finding you. So we're doing quite a bit in that respect as well. So that's kind of all of the D2C awareness. And then on the B2B side, we have relied quite heavily on my reputation because of the books I've written. So we've had quite an easy route in. I mean, not easy, but compared to other countries, we've had quite an easy route in South Africa. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in foreign markets, because I don't have the same reputation there as I do in South Africa, where I'm in the parent space. I'm probably almost a household name because of the books we've written and the books I've written. But I think that's been a big piece of it. Kind of the books laid the groundwork for people to accept what I was building, and then to just embrace it. So it's kind of been, I guess, an engine that's been working over the last 25 years.
Yeah, all it accumulating to get you to this point, right? It all adds up at the end, which is absolutely beautiful.
It does.
Now, what is the core, at the core, the foundational of the product, right? You are expanding, looking forward into the future on 2026, expanding your digital products. But fundamentally, what would you say are some of the key core foundational elements of the app that parents have access to when downloading and engaging with the app?
I'd say the three core pieces. So the main core piece is actually the algorithm that's baked into the app that'll deliver the nuanced information just for your baby. So you input data about your baby's feeding, their age, their weight, and that sort of thing. And then you get this very bespoke presentation. And if you and your sister had babies born on the same day, even your apps would look different because of the way of the data you put in. So that's the first piece. Very nuanced advice on 4 aspects of parenting, which is health, sleep, feeding, and play or development. So those 4 aspects, every day you get information on when your baby must go to sleep, what you should feed them, what recipes, how to establish breast milk, what vaccinations to do, how much should they weigh, and then the games to play. So that's one piece of the core product. Second piece of the core product are our higher touch courses and consultations. So you can actually, inside the app, you can do a course on how to get my baby to sleep through the night. You can do a course on how to breastfeed my baby. And you can even speak to a lactation consultant if you want. And that's a new piece of our business that we actually are launching in January with Discovery Health. It's called Nurture at Home. It's super exciting. And basically, it's going to be home care digital home care for babies being discharged from hospitals. That's a second core piece, is these courses and these consultations. And then the third core piece is our artificial intelligence, which we actually built 2 years ago. It launched 4 months after ChatGPT, interestingly. It actually is built on my body of knowledge, all of my books. It's got a medical triage system built into it from a pediatrician. And you can ask that app any questions in your own language. So if you want to go and ask it something in Zulu, and you've got information about your baby's 2 weeks old, and in your home language you say, what can I feed my baby tomorrow? It knows your baby, it knows your baby's data, it speaks your language, and it uses my content to deliver it. So that product is called Aya. It's our AI chatbot. So so those are the 3 core pieces of the product.
Again, quite ahead of the curve. Back to the first point from earlier on, that, introducing and incorporating AI, which one would say before 2023, AI was in the zeitgeist, but it was not as active as it is right now, right? It was not as foundational as it is right now. Because right now, if you have an app, like, are you considering AI, or is it something that which if you aren't, you kind of start being worried a little bit, because it's part of the conversation right now. And what does it look like to expand, right? You've spoken about expanding the product itself, but what does it look like to expand to other different markets, other geographical markets, like the UAE, the UK, the US? What does that look like? Does it change the product in any capacity? Does it kind of, filter it according to the different cultural context and nuance of the country, or is it foundational in essence?
No, it's a very good point. For instance, the UAE, we've got a potential large customer that hopefully will come on board in the next couple of months. If they come on board, we'll probably have to acquire a content business in the UAE in order to deliver kind of Middle Eastern specific recipes and language and so on. So yes, there is some customization for jurisdictions that are not English speaking or culturally very different. The United States, there's no customization needed. The app actually already knows which jurisdiction you're in, and then it actually changes the language in the app according to that. So in South Africa, we call nappies nappies. America, they're diapers. The app knows that, and it tells you in your own kind of almost vernacular or your own kind of lingo, the information. So it's pretty customized already for the US. We have got some conversations we're wanting to have in the US around, as I said, around people like Head Start and government departments, medical insurers in the US. A lot of the type of countries we want to do business in, or that will be a lighter landing, or an easier landing, would be places that do have medical insurance systems. Places like the UK, interestingly, even though they're English speaking, they don't have a medical insurance system. Everything runs off the government. So it's a little bit more tricky to actually launch into those areas. So we need to find populations and jurisdictions that are very similar to South Africa, actually. And the UAE, interestingly, India, Southeast Asia, and America are places that have actually very similar, in many respects, medical systems with their private and their government.
Yeah, which then kind of helps with the idea of globalizing the core fundamental of the product, right? Which is mothers and babies. That does not change. That's the same. You can, wherever you can be in
Exactly.
Iceland, a mother and a baby is still
Yeah.
fundamentally the same in context. But again, with those cultural nuances coming into play, that slightly change that a little bit. Now, winning this $1 million, not just rands, but $1 million prize, I'm sure has a big fundamental play, or rather will help have a big fundamental play in this expansion, both from the product standpoint and also from a market expansion standpoint. Is that something that you'd say is this is going to be the key for that, to press? You said earlier on, you just have to press go at this point. Is this that signal to say we press and go and we're hitting the road?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got some really big, hairy, audacious goals, which of course, if you're an entrepreneur, that's what you do. So things like integrating with data, with biometric data, babies' wearable devices. That's a big piece that needs to be done. Another big piece will be the acquisition of a Middle Eastern partner, potentially to help us with the language customization if we get this other contract over the line. So yeah, I mean, it is catalytic capital. I keep saying, like, this is the moment. This is catalytic. Things are going to change rapidly. What it also has allowed us to do is to employ more people. We currently employ a team of 13, 1 man, 12 women, all geniuses. And we've got this incredible culture within our team of supportive mothers, supportive women. I love hiring women. I think that they work so hard. Men do too, but I mean, they work so hard. They know how to juggle balls, and they hold this problem close to their hearts. So the capital is allowing us to hire the right people. It's allowing us to put in place some infrastructure in the product that we didn't have before. And it's hopefully going to open up new markets.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, I recently saw a video that spoke about this idea that AI, not just from a product standpoint where you can kind of, help evolve the product and help the product become better from a personalization and customization standpoint, etc. But also AI has its fundamental help and support from the business side of you as well, where you can now utilize AI resources and tools to make your business better, make your business faster, make your business a little bit more, with less restrictions than what would be without AI. Do you see that as something that is a plus for your business? It's being an impact-driven businesses means that impact is fundamentally as well a important factor. But what is the role of AI in your business, right? What is the role of AI in hiring, the role of AI in, building? What does that look like for you?
Look, I don't know if this is a good thing, but I think I'm doing what I'm doing on half the team that I would have had to do it with 4 years ago. And I think, when I say I don't know if it's a good thing, there's going to be a massive impact on jobs. But we are doing what I'm able to accomplish in a day would have taken me a week before. I've really bought that many hours. And that's because I've got my agent who I've set up with all of my content in it. It's in a closed loop system. All of my contracts are there. I can go and ask it a question. If I wanted to write me a pitch deck. I can tell it who the customer is, writes me a pitch deck. So, I mean, that type of daily grind of just creating proposals, and I mean, that's all done for you now. So for me, that's the predominant way that I use AI. I have told my team, because we're doing a very big code review next year, my developers, that they have to use AI to code faster. And they do it anyway. I mean, most developers are buying themselves double their time with AI. So yeah, I mean, I definitely use AI. I don't think I use it to the full, and that I can tell you that my son actually has a business in the AI sector. He was actually the original one who built us our chatbot originally, and they are optimizing businesses in ways where they're are doing a whole lot more than what we're doing. I'm not quite there yet, but we definitely do use AI to just buy us more time.
Yeah, and how do you even explain that to the consumers of your product as well? What is that cultural conversation from an AI standpoint for South African households and mothers, right? Yes, it is something that is in, the world knows about AI, everyone is aware of AI, but to some degree, it hasn't necessarily infiltrated the South African market and the African market as much as it has other markets. So what does that conversation from an educational standpoint look like with your consumers to explain to them the value of having those integrations and in the app itself that they're using? Or is that not even a concern for them
Yeah,
at this point?
yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I think people actually sit in two very different camps. There is a camp with AI that is like has thrown caution to the wind and is just accepting anything that AI says, which is super dangerous in the parenting space because AIs hallucinate, they make up stuff, and this is your baby. Like this is not how to change a car tire. This is your baby. So part of me wants to say to people, be very careful when you're using AI for things like parenting, because you actually want to know that the information that you're using has been carefully curated, it's responsible information, and that your data is safe. And I think there's a lot where people are very naively just jumping in with both feet. So there's that camp of people who are jumping into AI without thinking twice, and they're using things like ChatGPT for parenting advice. Like, that's a stupid idea. Don't do that, That's like calling in the dog trainer to babysit your children. I mean, you don't do that. You go in with something that's more specialized. So that's one camp. On the other side, you've got big business who are so risk averse and so risk terrified that they're going, oh, you've got AI in your product. How safe is it? How safe is people's data? And so there's a lot around, and we've experienced it with some of the businesses we deal with, where they actually are almost too cautious. We've got one of our customers at the moment. We've been trying to contract with them for 12 months. And the clause in the contract that's holding us up is the AI clause, So I think they're overthinking it. But I mean, and they've even done a very deep dive into our privacy to understand just how private the data is. But they still are, going round and round circles. So I think AI is accelerating. You do need to be cautious with it, but I think in some cases everybody's too terrified of it, and that's also not right. So the sense lies somewhere in the middle.
Mm. And I think it's here, right? What we genuinely cannot necessarily stop it to some degree. It's here, and it's important to kind of participate in it in order to be far ahead of the curve and make sure that you are part of the conversation around it, which is fundamentally important too. And I want to kind of understand now, where the next steps, where the future of this particular product is going. We mentioned global expansion, we mentioned product expansion as well. But if you were to look from kind of the outside looking in, is this the next, platform or product that is the mother's kind of right hand lady or right hand person in every household, in every kind of hospital bed as that mother is giving birth? Like, what is the ultimate vision and goal? You mentioned 2.5 million, but give us kind of the outside in looking in, the future of this platform as well as this company.
Yeah. So what's next for us is obviously the global expansion, which is a very big piece, and also the Nurture at Home project, which is having consultants digitally coming into parents' homes online to support moms. That's a big piece. And then I would say the third piece is our integration with wearable devices and smart nursery devices.
Mm. And from an educational standpoint, the And I asked this particularly because I think when we're looking at the South African kind of, cultural context, technology is something that is still to some degree shunned upon, especially from, mothers who might be sitting, maybe in the Eastern Cape or KwaZulu-Natal, who might see their cell phones as a guide and as a support structure, as something that could kind of be shunned upon, as it's the trusted guidance would be from a mother or a grandmother. So from an educational standpoint, what efforts do you guys make in ensuring that, they understand fully the value of this product far beyond, it just being another app on their phones?
So we have monthly webinars that that mums attend, and I think that's where we do a lot of our education and hand holding. We tell them about the product, we tell them how to use it, and then we answer some of their questions around early childhood. So it is all about education at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to ask you, before we wrap it up, your thoughts on, there's been kind of this big debate, at least in the West, could be different here within the Southern Hemisphere, but the idea of birth decline. I'd love to know your thoughts as someone who's an expert within the space. There's been, the later stage birth happening. There's also been a decline in women wanting to give birth and wanting to have children. What do you say to those type of women? What do you even think about this being a notion that's currently within the cultural context right now?
The bigger question we need to ask is, why is it happening? And I think the why and the answer to that question reflects a very sad state in the world. And that is that women are not wanting to have children because they know they're not going to be supported. They know that they cannot continue their careers. And they know that it almost becomes like a choice. Like, you can be that career woman and you can have your career world and your work life, or you can have children. And, I think if you go back to the 1950s and before, you didn't really have a choice. You couldn't have the career. And then that just wasn't an option for women. It was so difficult. And so you were at home. Your role was mother. And then from the 1950s coming through the feminist era and coming into the very recent times, it was like, don't worry, you can have it all. Like, oh, you can have it all. You can be the CEO of a company and you can have children, And the reality is that what got baked into that conversation was that women were just carrying double the load. It wasn't that she couldn't have it all, because now she had all the pressure. And this generation of mothers that are coming through now are going, okay, hold on, this is not what I signed up for, and I want to go and I want to choose. So I can choose to have my career, or I can choose to have my children, but I don't want to have this pressure of having it all. So, and we don't have the childcare, and we don't have the maternity leave, and we don't have the support that we actually need in order, and we don't have the village, because remember, we don't live in a village anymore,
Yeah.
So I think it's a very sad indictment on the world and on what the world is doing to women in particular, because this is a female problem. It really is. It has to be seen through a gender lens, because as involved as our dads are, as incredible as men are as fathers, they just don't carry the same load. So, I think we do need to look at that. I think that should every woman be having children? No. I mean, it's a hugely personal conversation. So for me to step out there and go, you're really missing out on something. You must have children, or I'm terribly worried about, kind of population growth. I'm not really thinking about it in that way. I'm more thinking about, like, what is driving this? Why is it that women are not having children? And also, why is it that the populations that are not having children are the populations that can afford to have children? So, the predominantly global the Western populations, whereas your developing populations who actually can't afford to have children are still having their 3 or 4 or 5 children. The balance is out. Those populations might need to exercise more population, not control, but, they need to, you have the children that you can afford to have. In the Western world, people aren't even doing that. They're just not having them. So yes, it's a very big conversation. I think behind that, if you think about what lies behind that, it's having employers support women as they have children. And we've definitely seen that, like in some of our, one of our populations that we services lives in the mining areas. It's a mines medical aid. And the moms all talk about us and that they want to have the babies so that they can have this app and these beautiful baby boxes, and they just feel supported. They feel special. So I do think there are things that a part that we can play in making parenting easier and making a transition easier. And if you play that part in making the transition easier, then you're actually addressing the real problem that underlies, the change, the shift in population dynamics.
Yeah. And what would you say is the value of doing building and creating a product like this, having a community first approach where you're building a community around the brand? Is that something, has that been your approach as well? You mentioned Reddit, you mentioned the Facebook groups, but initially, intentionally, has that been something that you've thought about, well thought through and baked within the foundation of
Yeah.
the business?
Yeah, definitely have. I think it was easier 10 years ago because people were very quick to jump into Facebook groups and into, now we've kind of retracted a little bit. My sense is, although I'm not a new mom anymore, but my sense is that moms rely more on their WhatsApp groups and on their more local communities in a way. And when I say local, I don't mean in their suburb. I mean like people who just specific to their, like, moms of young babies under a certain age who are career women, as an example, would be, a group of women. So I think, yes, we do build communities. I'm not finding it as easy as I did 10 years ago, though.
Yeah, yeah. And being a woman in business, I mean, I always kind of shy away from uh kind of looking at it in that framework, but because of the nature of the business that you're building, it's kind of something that I think is so important to discuss. The idea of being able to build a business and be a mom and be able to kind of see your passions through as well. What do you say to the moms that you engage with, the ones that are also in your business that you work with? The value of not just also building family, but also building your passions, your purpose, and ensuring that all of that holistically is what builds you as a woman. Because you've done that
Yeah, I mean,
successfully as well. Mm.
yeah, I could never have been a mom as my only calling. And I do think being a mom, there are women who are moms as their only calling, which are incredible. I could never have been that. For me, I always needed a different type of stimulation, a different type of challenge. And I feel very strongly that women who want to do that should be able to do that as flexibly as possible so they can be a mom as well. I was a good mom. I was involved in my children's lives. I did all their lifts. But I could only do that because my work has always been so flexible that I could get there for that ballet recital. I'll work at 2 o'clock in the morning if I have to, but I want to be there for that ballet recital or for whatever it is. So for me, it's very, very close to my heart that women need massive levels of flexibility. And that's the women that work in my team with me are 80% of them are mums and they have full flexibility. Nobody has to tell me when they are collecting their children. I don't want to know when you're collecting your children. Just make sure that you're in the meetings that you need to be in. And I think that level of flexibility. So when I look at business now, I cannot understand rigidity around always being in the office or always keeping certain hours. Like for me, or being managed with how many hours are you giving me? Or I can't understand that. So we execute on a very, very high level of trust in our business. And we can do that because everybody puts in much more than they are committed to put in. They really go the extra mile. And I think when people do that, you trust them more and you don't ask questions. So I like to say that our business is built on a culture that I would love to see all women being able to engage with.
Yeah, something that is essential to see women kind of advance as well within the working environment. What nudge do you put to the government sector, for an example, in ensuring and other kind of players within that space? You mentioned medical aid for providers, etc., into ensuring that women are also not only giving birth or having children, but they're doing it in a safe and in an effective way that is healthy to them and good for them, right? Because these fundamentally being not just consumers in this case, but also people who are your case studies, the people that use the products and have the products as something that helps their lives improve. But we can't get them to that point unless they've successfully successfully given birth and have successfully done, those transitions within their lives. So what conversations do you also have with those parts of members of the ecosystem as well, the government, essentially, from a birth giving standpoint, and ensuring that they're healthy, they do those processes as well in an effective way?
Yeah, I mean, government is definitely, and NGOs are definitely a piece of the population and of the stakeholders that you mentioned earlier on, who we haven't cracked that nut. In an ideal world, I mean, imagine every woman in South Africa has access to our app as a digital product, and it's not expensive when you start to look at it in a broader population. And they've got maternal, antenatal advice, they've got an antenatal class, they've got lactation courses, they've got postnatal depression screenings. We've baked that all in. So for me, when I look at government, like, this is the most cost-effective way that they could roll out global digital healthcare for mums.
It's a matter of just getting them to come into play as well, and to come into the party and get that through, to see that through for the mothers. No, this has been such an informative conversation, Meg. I've learned so much from your journey. I think any, entrepreneur who's watching and listening can take some nuggets from your experience and from your journey, and look into kind of how to scale and how to build a business. And you've done that in such a organic way, but also in a very strategic way, which is what I've kind of assessed within this conversation, that it was not just haphazardly doing business, but business done well, right? Business done strategically, business thought well. And I'm looking forward to that global expansion, particularly in the US. I know, that market absolutely loves ensuring that their babies are well taken care of, and that products like these exist within the market as well. What does a competitive nature look like, both in the South African context and where you're looking to go? Is there enough of that happening right now? What have you seen? Or are you guys the only players or the first players on hand?
I think there are other apps. They definitely are. They're just not as, they don't cover off the broad parenting journey in the way that we do. But the biggest differentiator from us is that we are expert-led, and we partner with businesses to deliver the products to moms. I think those are the two things that differentiate us.
Yeah. And how do moms get hold of your product, right? You mentioned the app. Where do they get the app? What is required for them to be able to get on board?
So if they just want to go and test it out, they can download the free version on the Apple Store, and also on the App Store and on the Google Play Store. And the name they're looking for is Parent, and then new word Sense, Parent Sense. So do go and look for that. You can also find me on Instagram, which is Meg Faure .sense or parentsense.app. And I've also got a podcast called Sense by Meg Forree. So if you are a new mom, that's probably a really good place to find me, on everywhere, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Sense by Meg Forree.
Amazing, amazing. What word do you have for those investors thinking, this is a business that I want to get into? I want to jump on board on this mission. If someone's listening and thinking they want to get into either the sector or within your business as well, what words would you give to them as well?
Yeah, look, I think words for investor would definitely be, there are a lot of businesses out there that are doing good and will do well. And, I think for any investor, that's really what you're looking for, is a business that is going to not just do exceptionally well, but is going to do good. And we would welcome any conversations with investors, particularly anybody who is a strategic investor who would be taking us into new markets, into new partnerships, has got a book of really amazing, kind of B2B businesses, connections in different jurisdictions with telcos, as an example. So anything like that, investors who are interested in impact, interested in gender-lensed investing, and are interested in helping us with our B2B relationships, we would welcome any conversations.
Amazing. I think, this is definitely one of those companies. The founder is exceptional. The product is exceptional. So definitely, I think as an investor, you would be doing an incredibly well venture here. What do you have to say to the mothers? Because that's another bracket. What if you were to speak to the mothers who are listening, what do you have to say to them with regards to the platform as well?
Yeah, so I would say to them, mothering is hard. The journey you're on, I know, I've been there, and it's hard. There there's two things I think you need to know. One is that you need to start to be able to thrive in the gray, and that not everything's going to be perfect. Not everything's going to go according to a plan. And being able to have that kind of hold it loosely is a really good attitude as a new parent. So that would be my one thing. And then for the stuff that you can't hold loosely, that you really do need to have the science on, the stuff that you really do need the answers for, a product like Parent Sense in your hand is definitely something that I would be getting. So hold what you have to loosely, and what you can, we'll do the rest for you.
Amazing. Download the app. Go ahead and check out Meg as well. An award-winning entrepreneur. That's something that's not everyone has next to their name, Meg. So once again, congratulations on winning that prize. I'm sure it must have been a daunting experience. It is the big pitch, right? So I'm sure it must have been a daunting experience, but you know, eloquently had, as we open up the show, shared why you were those deserving winners and you took it home. Yeah, I think that's all that I wanted to kind of find out from you. I don't know if you had anything else to share with us before we wrap it up and say goodbye.
No, it's just been wonderful chatting with you, Vuyo, and lovely watching your journey as you really do give a wonderful platform to entrepreneurs. So thank you for the time.
Of course. Hopefully we'll be seeing you in New York City as well and in Cape Town, right? Here for the December
Definitely.
holidays. So it's definitely going to be an exciting time. And again, looking forward to that global expansion. I'm all things global on the show. So when it comes to helping founders, investors, and just different stakeholders understand global business, then this is the kind of conversations that really excite me. So thank you so much to you, Meg, for joining me on the show, and thanks to everyone at home for tuning in and being part of this conversation. Just two women having a beautiful Tuesday evening, chatting about all things business. Meg, have a fantastic evening. I will see you soon.
Thank you very much for your cheers.
All right. Cheers for now.